Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wa salatu wa salam ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. Inshallah, we'll continue reading from Imam al-Nawawi's Tibyan fi Adabi Hamalat al-Quran, translated as Etiquette with the Quran. We are on page 70. Which puts us inside of the chapter on the etiquettes of recitation, where Imam al-Nawawi talks about particular etiquettes that one should observe while they recite the Quran. And in the last segment, we talked about someone who's unable to recite al-Fatiha. And the thing that Imam al-Nawawi mentioned is that someone who's unable to recite al-Fatiha should recite letters of the Quran that are of equal length, and if they're unable to do that, then they should recite different adhkar that are of equal length, and if they're still unable to do that, then they need to just pause long enough for al-Fatiha to typically have been recited. And that's where that's where we stopped off in Imam al-Nawawi's book. So inshallah we'll continue with the next issue, where he talks about joining several surahs in a single rak'ah. And he says, rahimahullah, there is no harm in joining chapters in a single rak'ah. So there's no harm in joining several surahs in a single rak'ah. It has been established in the authentic books of Bukhari and Muslim that Abdullah ibn Mas'ud, may Allah be pleased with him, said, I know the chapters that the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam would couple together in recitation, and he mentioned 20 chapters from the last two parts of the Quran, each of them 2 chapters in one rak'ah. So we have this practice of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam where he himself recited multiple surahs in a single rak'ah. And Imam al-Nawawi doesn't mention it here because it's not as strong, but there are also other hadiths where people were mentioned to him that they did this, that they would read, for example, I think, Qul huwallahu ahad in every rak'ah after reciting something else. And this was brought to the attention of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and he asked the person why, and in the end the Prophet affirmed it. So the Prophet actually doing it is a strong indicator of its permissibility, and the other hadiths also verify this. So Imam al-Nawawi continues saying, we mentioned previously that a group of the pious forebears would often recite the complete Quran in one rak'ah. So we have multiple evidences indicating its permissibility. So we've talked several times in the past about the need for a recitation to be audible or silent, and whether it should be. So there was a long discussion about whether someone should be reciting audibly or not, and about how it really goes back to whether someone can concentrate and ponder as well in each one. And he also talked about how reciting audibly has many benefits, and that if one is free of fear of committing riya, that they really should recite audibly, because it tends to be more collected of the heart and the mind for the reciter, and it causes them to be more vigorous. And it also extends the benefit of what's being recited to the people around him. And so in the end, Imam al-Nawawi mentioned that one really ought to recite audibly, as long as they don't fear ostentation, riya, and they're not going to disturb and frustrate people who are praying. So this already was mentioned, and we talked about how it's obligatory to read certain things. But we need to talk about what does it mean for something to be read, and then what does it mean for something to be audible and for something to be silent. And typically when we talk about something being read, the minimum definition is that you could hear it yourself if there were no external disturbances around you. Okay, so Imam al-Nawawi says, Muslims have consensus that it is recommended to recite the Quran audibly during the morning prayers, the Friday congregational prayer, the 2 Eids, during the first 2 rak'ahs of the sunset and nightfall prayers, during Tarawih prayers, and the witr prayer that follows it. It is recommended for one leading a congregational prayer and for the individual praying alone. Okay, so even if you're not praying in front of other people, it is still recommended for you to recite with a louder voice than you do during your sunnah prayers. Okay, so even if the only person in the room that you're leading, that is praying, is you, it's still recommended to do. Why is that? Well, one of the wisdoms of this is that when you pray, you can see humans, right? But there's also jinn around us, and there's malaika, and they may be joining in prayer with you. So there is still an audience there that may benefit from your audible recitation. Okay, so this is recommended. Reciting aloud in the prayers mentioned above is recommended for one leading a congregational prayer and for the individual praying alone. Notice it's recommended, it's not required. If someone omits it, the prayer is still valid. Someone who is led in prayer does not make his recitation audible according to the consensus. It is a sunnah that the recitation be audible during the prayer occasioned by a lunar eclipse, but not audible during the prayer for a solar eclipse. A lunar eclipse will happen at night. A solar eclipse will happen during the day, and so the audibility follows the time of the day. So you'll notice that typically the general rule is that when the sun's up, prayers are not loud, and when the sun's down, they are. Now, there are some exceptions, yes, but that's the general rule. And about eclipse prayers, you should note that I think the Malikis and the Hanbalis would say that they would both be audible, regardless of what time of day or night it is, that they would be audible. So there is a disagreement between the scholars here. So if you live in a heterogeneous community, don't be shocked if someone does it audible all the time, and don't be shocked if people do them audible at night but silent during the day. The recitation is audible in the prayer in which worshippers supplicate for rain, Salat al-Istisqa. It is not audible in a funeral prayer if it is performed during the day, but it is audible when prayed during the night, according to the sound preferred opinion of the Shafi'i madhab. So Imam al-Nawawi there gives us a breakdown of which prayers should be done audible and which ones should be done with a lower voice. And remember, when we talk about silently, when it comes to these things, what he means when it comes to obligatory invocations and recitations is that you can hear it. That's the minimum, so it still has to be uttered. Next, he's going to talk about recitation in voluntary supererogatory prayers. And he says recitation is not audible in the supererogatory daytime prayers. So if you're not praying an obligatory prayer, and you're not praying one of the prayers he mentioned above, but instead you're praying one of the rawatib or a nafila prayer, or salat al-duha, for example, it would not be audible, with the exception of what we've just mentioned concerning the 2 Eids and the prayer for rain. So the general rule is during the day, recitation is going to be inaudible. Our Shafi companions disagreed concerning the night prayer vigil. Okay, this is tahajjud. Should tahajjud, which is a night prayer, is it going to be silent or is it going to be audible? And the dominant position is that it is not audible. The second opinion is that it is indeed audible, and the third position hold that one alternates his recitation between audibility and silence, and this is what al-Baghawi chose. Okay, so the dominant position is that when you pray tahajjud at night, it's not going to be loud. Al-Baghawi's position, which is at the end, is it's a nice position. It's nice because you go back and forth between audible and inaudible. And if you do that, one of the benefits of this is that you will make yourself a little bit more energetic, and there's also the possibility that you'll help others remember to do it. But this isn't the preferred opinion according to the later Shafi'is. I was just pointing out that Imam al-Baghawi's position has a point because it gathers between the wisdoms of the two different positions. If it's audible, then you're going to be more vigorous and you're going to wake up other people and they might do it. If you're silent, there's not going to be any riya, there's not going to be any ostentatiousness. Al-Baghawi joins between the two. So anyways, if one were to recite, if one missed a prayer normally performed at night and made it up during the day, or if one missed a prayer normally performed during the day and made up during night, which aspect is taken into account in order to determine whether it should be audible or silent? The time in which it was missed or the time in which it was made up? Okay, so suppose someone has missed Dhuhr. Will be easier. Suppose someone slept through Asr and Maghrib has been in for a while. So Asr, if it was prayed on time, should have been inaudible, right? But the person slept through Asr and they slept through part of Maghrib and the sun is now down. When they make up Asr, is it going to be inaudible looking back at the time that it became obligatory? Or is it going to be more audible looking at the time in which it's performed? Which do we go back to? Do we go back to when it became obligatory, or do we go back to when it is actually performed? Now, this isn't going to be an issue if you missed a daytime prayer and made it up during the day. And it's not going to be an issue if you missed a night prayer and made it up during the night, right? That's not going to be an issue, but people do miss daytime prayers and want to make them up during the night. And they do miss nighttime prayers and end up wanting to make them up during the day. So we have to have an answer. So what do we look at? Do we look at when it became obligatory or when it was performed? So you can see that you're going to have to base it on something, right? But which one is going to dominate here? Which is the one we're going to look for? And he says, our Shafi companions have two opinions. The preponderant one is that the time in which the missed prayer is made up is taken into account. Okay, so if he missed a daytime prayer and he makes it up during the night, it's going to be audible. If he misses a nighttime prayer and makes it up during the day, it's going to be inaudible. That's the general rule here. And if one were to recite audibly when he should have been silent or silent when he should have been audible, his prayer is valid, though he has committed something offensive, but he does not need to make the prostration of forgetfulness. So if someone prays and audibly when it should have been silent, or he prays silently when it should have been audible, the prayer is still valid. There's no need to cause a commotion. There's no need for sujood sahu, the prostration of forgetfulness. The prayer is valid. People forget. Okay, there's no need to change the imam. There's no reason to beat yourself up. You'll do better next time, inshallah. Now, Imam al-Nawawi says, know that what is meant by silent or inaudible in recitation with regards to saying Allahu Akbar and other statements of the prayer. And here he's primarily talking about obligatory sayings. Okay, is that one recites them such that he hears them for himself. It is indispensable to utter them such that he hears them. That is, if he is of sound hearing and there's no interference. Okay, so it means it's loud enough that he could hear them himself. If he was in a room with the door closed, without a fan running, without an AC running, without children crying, without cars beeping their horns, without a TV blaring, without other people causing noises, without it raining outside, without planes going overhead, okay? So what we mean by it's silent is that it's just loud enough that he would be able to hear himself if there was no external interference. And this is the minimum that obligatory litanies need to be in order for them to be counted. And this is also the minimum that recitation needs to be in order to be considered recitation. And there is no disagreement on this. Okay, so this is, if we look at Kitab al-Adhkar by Imam al-Nawawi also, he's going to say something similar to what I just said, where he makes the distinction between obligatory invocations and non-obligatory invocations. And something he mentions is that when it comes to non-obligatory adhkar, there's two aspects. One is its audibility, and one is its presence in the heart. And it's best to combine them too, but it would be counted as dhikr if someone were to just do it in their heart. Okay, so it would count, it's better to do them both. And he says that fear of ostentation, fear of riyā, isn't a justification for not doing it out loud. Okay, so if you're in a situation where you can't make adhkar because someone's going to get mad at you, or they're going to hurt you, or you're going to wake people up and you really shouldn't be waking people up, or it's going to disturb people because it's a lecture and people are going to hear you, etc., etc., and you've got nothing else to do, yes, you can make dhikr in your heart without moving your tongues. But those are some good reasons and justifications for doing it. Worrying that people will think you're showing off, that's not a valid justification. Okay. Our Shafi companion said that it is recommended for the Imam leading an audible prayer to remain silent during 4 periods while standing. In general, if you look at our prayer, there's always something being said in the prayer. Whether, if we look at prayer as a whole, not as just the performance of individuals, but if we look at like someone praying alone, or we look at the Imam plus the congregation, from beginning to end, some sort of dhikr is being done. The takbir at the beginning is dhikr. The dua is a dhikr. Seeking protection from shaitan is a dhikr. Reading the Fatiha, dhikr. The surah afterwards, dhikr. The takbir for moving into ruku'ah, dhikr. What's said during ruku'ah, the tasbihat and the other things, dhikr. Sami Allahu liman hamida, Rabbana lakal hamd as you go up, dhikr. Takbir when you go down into sujood, dhikr. Moving up into sitting, the takbir, dhikr. Allahumma ighfirli, dhikr. Okay? If you look at the prayer, whenever you're motionless or transitioning, so whether you're motionless or in motion, dhikr is being made. This, by the way, is one of the reasons why when someone moves and they say the Allahu Akbar, it's not supposed to be done when they reach there as some sort of sign of accomplishment. It's supposed to be done right after you begin moving, and it's supposed to end right before you stop. And this way your prayer, from beginning to end, has dhikr throughout the entire thing. Okay, but there's a small exception here, and Imam al-Nawawi is about to list it, and it has to do with 4 pauses that an imam should make while praying. So he says, our Shafi companion said that it is recommended for the imam leading an audible prayer to remain silent during 4 periods while standing. First is silence after the opening Allahu Akbar in order to make an opening supplication, and so that followers may also say the opening Allahu Akbar and their supplication. Second, a brief pause right before reciting Surah Al-Fatiha, and a brief pause between the completion of Al-Fatiha and saying Ameen, so that Ameen is not misconstrued to be actually parts of Al-Fatiha. And the third is a long pause after Ameen, so the followers themselves can silently read Al-Fatiha. And the fourth is after finishing the recitation of a surah of the Quran, in order to provide a separation between the recitation and saying Allahu Akbar before descending to bow. Okay, so those are 4 places where the imam is going to pause a little bit in order to let the followers do what they need to do, with one of the most significant ones being after Al-Fatiha. Something I've noticed as I've traveled is that this third one, the one after Al-Fatiha, I'm sorry, does he say it's the second one? No, it's the third one. Okay, he listed it as the third one. Okay, so after Al-Fatiha, that pause. Some of the other madhahib do not like this. Okay, the Malikis in general, they don't like this. The Hanafis, apparently, they don't like this. One of the things I've noticed when praying behind people from the other madhahib that do not really like to have this pause, okay, in their madhab, it's not recommended for them to do it. What they will often do when leading a congregation where they know Shafis are praying is during that third pause, they'll go ahead and they'll recite, but they'll keep it low. And it's something Shafis will also do when they're leading people from other madhabs. So it's a nice way that the various madhahib can be faithful to their own madhab while also being respectful of the others. So this is just a little additional faida. So this is all I'm going to recite today. This is all I'm going to read today. Inshallah, we'll continue the next segment talking about saying Ameen. And that's it for today. We'll see you later. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.